Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans across the nation and around the world, throughout the universe, actually. This is Tim May with the Tim May Show. That's a pretty well-named show, but I'm adding an addendum with Matt Wilhelm. Matt Wilhelm, welcome to the Tim May Show. It's pregame talk, preseason talk 101 for the 2024 Buckeyes, for the 2024 college football season. Yeah, it sort of started last week with week 0, but if guys are playing, make it week 1, right? But I mean, this is really week 1 when it matters for Ohio State football. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, Matt's going to be with me every week through the season this year by popular demand, mainly by myself. I'm a popular guy, and I made the demand. But Matt Wilhelm, once again, welcome to the Tim May Show, my man.
Oh, Tim, it's great to be with you. It's an exciting time of year for not just Buckeye fans, but college football fans, we've got high school football's got week 1 under their belts. My son, St. Edward Eagles, came down to Columbus and took care of Pickerington North to kick off our season.
Yeah.
And very quickly, we transitioned to week 2 of high school football, but week 1 of college football. And again, for a lot of guys, wives and families are going to lose their husbands probably Thursday through Mondays, most days of the week. So it's a very exciting time.
Absolutely, it is, man. I've told you this before, Matt. I would go into a funk. I mean, I grew up in Alabama and Texas. As a little kid, moved up here when I was 22 years old, way back when, 1976. But I've loved football since I could stand up, and I didn't get to play it on a big time level because I was. Like I told everybody in high school, I was 6'2", 150 pounds, and I might have been the slowest kid in school. So nothing added up for me playing football, right? But the point was, I've always loved the game. I love the pageantry about it, but I also love the scheming, the dreaming, whatever eaming you want to throw in there, right? I mean, this is the moment in time when all but the teams that played in all but half of the teams that played in week 0 are undefeated and haven't played a game yet, and they're feeling great about themselves and their prospects, right? And and by the way, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get into some deep stuff about football because I've got a recorded guest on here, Archie Griffin, coming on, who's going to talk about having a statue erected a couple of weeks ago at the Rose Bowl, but Ohio State got a copy of it and is going to unveil it in the rotunda on Friday before this opener. Of course, the next day, Archie Griffin is going to dot the I, one of a handful of people who've ever had the honor of dotting the I in Script, Ohio, in Ohio Stadium. So that'll be fun for him. And I also have a conversation with Mecca Don, whose recent production, Buckle Up, collaborated with the Ohio State football media department to put out this video with his song on it, Buckle Up, which really gets you jacked up for this, what promises to be a hell of a 2024 football season for Ohio State. But going back to this, Matt, you're a former player of great repute. You were in the midst of the 2002 national championship team that won it all and reignited really this fervor that Ohio State fans now have, that they think their birthright is a national championship.
Yeah.
We'll get into that in a minute. But do you get jacked up for football season? I mean, do you go into a little bit of a funk when there's no football?
Oh, absolutely. And I think there's lulls in a year, when all you're left with is baseball,
Yeah.
or NBA, because again, NBA, it's you don't watch the regular season, the playoffs get a little bit exciting. And again, winning a championship in any sport, I'll say, the NHL, Stanley Cup Finals is exciting, but everything else is kind of irrelevant. Major League Baseball playoff time is extremely exciting, but 62 baseball games, it's like whether you could lose 10 in a row and still win a World Series,
Well, you just woke me up. Excuse me. Go ahead.
Something captivating about football in general. I think it's also it's the physicality. It's the although the game is not quite as barbaric as we know it, there's something to be said about it. There's the fantasy football aspect, and I think what's most exciting, I'll say, about the college game now, exciting and interesting, is because of how much it mimics the NFL on how it captivates you now, almost like 24/7, 365.
Yes.
With again, with platforms like Lettermen Row and 11 Warriors and on 24/7 and Max Prep. So you're following high school kids and their visits and their camp visits all spring and all summer long. Who wins them in the recruiting battle? What type? And then again, the transition to the transfer portal and what that represents in the college football landscape right now. It's a lot like free agency.
Yep.
The NIL opportunity is a lot like free agency. It's a lot like professional sports, where not in every case, but in some cases, the kid goes to the highest bidder. Where can I get the most money? Not even the best education or the best opportunity to play.
Right.
That's kind of an afterthought for some folks, but also not for others. So it's a very exciting time. And I think, this time, now 1 week away or less than a week away of actually playing a football game, everything you followed leading into this season, not only for our Ohio State Buckeyes, but I'll just say whomever you're rooting for, is those recruits that you've been excited about. What role are they going to have? The guys that you acquired through the transfer portal, especially for us, Caleb Downs, McLaughlin at center, the Junkins at running back, Will Howard at quarterback, and for us, they filled in some massive gaps that in some cases we didn't even need to fill. But because we're Ohio State, we acquire these gentlemen from other places. What role will they have? And again, what did LSU do on the recruiting trail, and what transfer portal guys do they get? And so it's a very interesting time in college football for you to basically see 6 to 9 months worth of work begin to pay off for you.
Yeah.
And I'll say at the high school level, it's like, oh, all the sprints, all the conditioning, all the weightlifting pays off in week 1, right? At the high school level. But there's so many other business type levels now associated with the college football game. And this is when it pays off. This is when, these highly paid coaches and coordinators, managing these teams, leading these young men, is really where you get to see, are they the right guys? How do they gel? And I know I do this every year, Tim, is Ohio State, at least, last year we had Notre Dame, which, or last 2 years we had Notre Dame, a couple years before we had Oregon. It's like, but this year you get, a couple of MAC teams and a Sun Belt team.
You get a warm up.
With Marshall as a kind of like a build up to real deal big time football, where in Big Ten play, where the margin for error is extremely small.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I hate to bring up a name of another team, but another team in this conference last year had almost the same kind of buildup, and it was Michigan. We'll see if they get to keep all their hardware. That's another story for another day. But the bottom line is, this is almost the way in college football. It's kind of a dream schedule from the standpoint of, every week presents a new challenge and maybe an increased challenge until you get to that mid-season crescendo, which is leading in Iowa the week before you play at Oregon. That's going to be a 2-week stretch, and then an off week, right? Ohio State gets an off week after the first 2 weeks of the season, as a matter of fact.
Yep.
But, real quick, I wanted to ask you this before we move to my conversation with Archie Griffin. 2002, Ohio State became the first team in history to go 14-0, and won the national championship. I think you remember that, right?
I do.
Yeah, you remember that. You remember that season.
Talk to me about that.
My point is, to win it this year, you're going to have to play. I'm not going to say you're going to have to go 16-0, but you got to play at minimum 16 games to win it all. You remember how beat up y'all were, much less Miami was, after that national championship game in Tempe, Arizona. Are college football teams equipped to make this kind of elongated run?
That's a great question, and I think the roster management, the same way that an NFL team has to manage, active roster, inactive roster, and now the expansion of their the practice squad roster. I think the NFL saw that from a health standpoint. I do believe that, with 85 scholarship players, a handful of preferred walk-ons and walk-ons that may have been in the program for a few years that just are not on scholarship yet. Especially on special teams, is where probably they're going to play the biggest role. Speaking specifically of Ohio State and this long season, projected either number 1 or number 2 in almost every poll, and being penciled in many cases to be at least one of the final 4 teams in that tournament to compete for a national championship in the college football playoff.
Yeah.
Is you look at the high-end talent that we have is hyper elite, but then I would also say, like, the depth that we have, and although some of it is unproven, and you look at Henderson and Junkins, the 1-2 punch. Travion has had the injury bug hit him as a Buckeye.
Right.
And to know that you don't have to settle for, and now a number 2 running back is likely a starter at most other places in the country, but you've got the Junkins kid who can take 20 to 25 carries if need be in a football game, because that's who he was at Ole Miss prior to coming to Ohio State. You look at, Devin Brown, just behind Will Howard, something knocks him out. The fall is not significant. You look at what Hartline's done in recruiting at receiver. You look at the defensive backfield. You look at what Larry Johnson's done on the defensive line. And I know that some of those guys, the guys that are going to start, are the names that we know because they've been those guys, and we can rattle off all those guys that came back. But there's a lot of guys that have had a lot of hype or played a little bit of football that need to rise to the occasion if need be. So I think is every roster built to play 16 games? I'd probably say no, especially if you're talking, a Liberty of the world. The Liberty is going to have to be extremely healthy. You win a lot of football games and to be extremely healthy to be one of those teams to reach the playoff. Yep. But one player goes down, the wrong player for them goes down, and it changes their season. Yeah. So I do think there's some great examples of teams that are built for it. And I think that some of I'll say that the top 12 or 14 that you think should make it out of the Power 5, and then some that could qualify potentially may not be if, that one guy, quarterback, cornerback, running back, stud receiver goes down at the wrong time. It completely changes their season and puts a lot of pressure on the coaches.
Yeah. Well, hey, we're going to get back and talk about some other things too. Especially, I want to talk to you about the linebacker area for Ohio State, which was a little bit of a quandary going into preseason camp. But the way Sonny Styles has come on of late at that will linebacker spot, C.J. Hicks is right there chasing him. But then Cody Simon not only being the starting Mike linebacker, but having that Block O jersey awarded to him. Just
you got to find ways to get these kids on the field.
Yeah. Yeah, but just the pride you have, as a former national championship starting linebacker for Ohio State, what it takes, et cetera. And of course, the game has changed a little bit since you were there, but not that much. No. It's still about hitting and tackling. But we're going to come back. First, let's get into my conversation here, though, with Archie Griffin, who he's going to have the weekend of weekends, man, is, having his statue unveiled in the rotunda of Ohio Stadium on Friday afternoon, and then followed on Saturday. He gets to dot the I, one of a handful of people who've ever gotten to dot the I with the Ohio State marching band. Most of the time it goes to a last year or whatever, 4th year, 5th year sousaphone player. But this time it's going to be the only 2-time Heisman Trophy winning player, Archie Griffin. Let's get to my conversation with him right now. Well, ladies and gentlemen, man, it's always a pleasure when I have this young man on. And I say young man because he's younger than me by 4 or 5 months. The incomparable, and you can dot that I in incomparable now, Archie Griffin. Archie Griffin, welcome back to the Tim May Show, my man.
Well, thank you, Tim. I appreciate you having me on.
Dude, we just saw a video. We watched video of them unveiling your statue at the Rose Bowl. That same statue or a facsimile thereof is going to be unveiled in is it the portico? Is it the rotunda? What do you call that thing? The big arch. Pardon the expression.
I call it the rotunda.
Yeah, me too.
I call it the rotunda.
Yeah, but now it's a rotunda with an arch. That's what I'm going to like about it, man. You've got to be, I don't know what cloud you're on, but it's got to be above cloud 9 at this point, doesn't it? With the pats on the back, and of course we're going to get to in a minute the honor of dotting the I with the marching band on Saturday against Akron. You've got to be fired up.
No question about it, Tim. I am fired up. The family and we all went out to Pasadena to do the Rose Bowl unveiling, and that was terrific. And to come back home and now have the opportunity to see a statue unveiled at the Ohio State University is a little extra special. I never thought anything like this would happen. But Tim, when things like this happen, you just think back. And I just think back on all those great teams that I had the opportunity to play on at Ohio State. those 4 years were great years, and I played with some great guys. And that's why I always say, I was in the right place at the right time with the right people, because without those people, that group, those groups, this would not be happening.
Yeah, I just got a little bit of goosebumps there because y'all let me come talk to the 1973 team. I'm not sure I did it justice last year, y'all's big reunion, but I was just struck by the fact that you were sitting there in the midst of these guys. You understand what I'm saying? You were one of them. You weren't. They didn't have a throne there with you like a pedestal or whatever for you to sit on, and and that was a team that really you talk about a group that boosted you, right? I mean,
Oh,
into
no question.
yeah.
That 73 team was just unbelievable. That defense, I mean, it was just awesome, just absolutely awesome. And we got through that season. We just had that one little hiccup with that tie, and boy, that haunts me. But the fact of the matter is, we still got that opportunity to go out to the Rose Bowl and play a USC team that had beaten us pretty bad the year before, and we beat them about the same score that they'd beaten us.
Yeah, it is amazing. But like I'm going back to, I was just amazed by you were just one of the group. I mean, you were a major part of the group, but you were just one of the group, and you've never, ever, ever, ever. I'm trying to think of the next word that comes. You've never, ever, ever declined from praising those guys. I mean, the group, the guys around you and stuff. And I think a lot of people, we look at the star power in college football now, even in high school football for that matter, in college and in the NFL, and now you're going to have a situation probably down the road in college football where some guys are going to be getting paid a lot more than other guys. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes,
Do you think
absolutely.
do you think that's going to affect college football in a negative way? What's your take on that? I've always been an advocate. You guys should have been getting something all along because you're
Yes, yes.
putting blood, sweat, and tears into the same. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, I hope that it doesn't become a case where guys are getting tons more than the other players. I mean, I'm an advocate, as you know,
Yeah.
for NIL. I mean, I think it's certainly the right thing to do. But at the same time, Tim, when you look at it, it's probably going to be just kind of a mirror of the next level.
Yeah.
Because you will see those quarterbacks, those receivers, those defensive backs probably getting a little more or have more opportunity than some of the linemen, offense and defense linemen, although those defensive linemen, especially those rush guys, will probably be getting a lot as well. But
Yeah.
I think it's going to be kind of a mirror of what they're going to have at the next level. And that's not the way I'd like to see it. I mean, personally, when I thought of NIL, my vision of NIL was you got to go to school. He's on scholarship. He does well, and a company of some sort would ask them to do a commercial. Well, they get paid for it. Or somebody would ask them to do a speech. A corporation would ask them to do a speech. Well, they get paid for it. That's what I envisioned NIL as being, but it's become a lot more than that. Right now. And so it's going to be interesting. They've really got to get some get their arms around the NIL thing. But it's going to work its way out. I truly believe that.
Yeah. By the way, just an aside, I think the only way they eventually do that is college football players will be under contract, just like NFL players are. And when you're under contract, somebody can actually tell you what to do, right? I mean, for the most part. And
that's right. Yeah.
I keep telling everybody
and
that's yeah. Go ahead.
It's got to be really difficult. I mean,
Yeah.
Coach's standpoint. I mean, they're recruiting their young men every year. I mean, you got to recruit them to keep them there. So you're not only recruiting a new class, but you're recruiting your guys to stay. And that's got to be very, very difficult. I mean, it really does. So
yeah,
I'd like to see some changes, and I know there will be.
Hey, and everybody always says, well, Woody would, I go, Woody Hayes and Bear Bryant, they adapted, they're just two names off the top. They adapted to whatever the deal was, just like Ryan Day and his staff immediately have rolled into this with the, like I always say, Buckeye Nation is a real thing. It is
That's right.
living, breathing being, and they have, harnessed all of that, quickly, to stay at least up, if not ahead of the game, right? And Woody would have done the same thing, right?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I'd say about Coach Hayes is, people say, well, he would not have been successful in this area. he would have adapted. I mean, that's just the way that he was.
Yeah.
I mean, he was going to do it as long as it's right and it's in the rules. He would have adapted.
Yeah, and benefits the players. He was always, man, he was always looking out for you guys in one form or fashion, whether it be academics or anything else. I mean, he was very much involved. I don't, I didn't come here to deify him, but I mean, it's the reputations don't always match what's going on behind the scenes. Let's just put it that way, right?
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely, absolutely.
Hey, Arch, when they pulled off that cover of that statue, I don't think do you have a statue anywhere else? I'm trying to think. Is there?
No, no, I don't. That Rose Bowl one was the very first, and believe me, I never thought that anything like that would ever happen. So that Rose Bowl one was the very
I know.
first.
Are you just standing there going? I mean, because I've always described you as the most confident but humble person I've ever met, because your humility is out there, but you were confident in your abilities. You were confident, in my opinion, of what you could bring, you know what I mean, to the fore with your teammates, but you were confident in your abilities. But what is it really like to stand there and see yourself, if you know what I'm saying?
Well, it's hard to explain because, again, it's something that I never thought would happen. And I'll be honest with you, I was a little anxious to see it myself. I mean, I had seen Brian Hanlon, the sculptor. Yeah, I had seen renderings, but certainly did not expect anything like what he ended up with. I thought it was truly outstanding. And for my family to be there and share that with me, it was a little bit overwhelming, Tim. It really, really was.
Yeah.
But I was very, very happy with the result. And looking at that thing really makes you feel like you've been blessed. And I have been.
Yeah.
No
I don't know. I mean, how many times I've walked up to that Rose Bowl Stadium and seen Jackie Robinson's statue out.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Wow. People don't remember what a great football player that young man was. And
exactly
then he decided to play baseball for some idiot reason. No, I'm just joking. But I'm just wondering, because we're recording this before Friday this coming Friday. I'm talking about the season opener, and then Saturday, when we're going to get into dotting the I in just a second. I'm not going to keep you long, but what is it? What do you expect? What do you expect to feel when you're standing there with Ross Bjork and others in the rotunda, and suddenly there's an Archie Griffin statue? Because if you remember correctly, I brought this up with you a while ago. I think there ought to be a pantheon of statues there of coaches who've won the national championship and at least Heisman Trophy winners. And what the heck, throw Bill Willis and Chick Harley in there too.
Right.
And maybe Orlando Pace. But where do you stop, right? But I mean, you should be walking through from Woody Hayes Drive to that rotunda, just a grove, pardon the pun, of just guy to just, for one another, to brag about the tradition of Ohio State football. But what do you think you're going to feel when you're standing there in that rotunda?
Well, I know I will be overwhelmed knowing that it's the Ohio State University and the statue is right there. Because again, I never thought anything like that would happen. We haven't had any football players with statues, so I was not expecting anything like that. So it's going to be a little overwhelming, especially being at the Ohio State University at the Horseshoe. I mean, that takes it to another level for me. I mean, it really does. I mean,
absolutely. I'm getting goosebumps for it. Then the next day, man, somebody's going to grab your arm and you're going to go marching out. I don't know if you practiced marching yet, or are you just going to stroll out there like a superstar? What's going to be your approach to becoming one of the few people who've ever gotten a chance to dot the I, including Woody Hayes, Jack Nicklaus, Buster Douglas after you upset Mike Tyson? That was an interesting choice, but it was at the time, you had to be there, right, to understand the magnificence of it. But are you practicing? I mean, you don't want to trip, right?
Well, that's the thing that I don't want to do. I don't want to trip, and I don't think I will. But I'm not going to be doing any real high stepping or anything like that to make that a possibility. So I'm looking forward. I'm gonna do whatever they tell me to do and get out there and dot the I and give a bow, do the whole works. But I'm looking forward to that. I mean, again, that was another thing that well, they're overwhelming me this year with the things that they're doing for me, and I've been so surprised at every step of the way,
Yeah.
and I'm honored and greatly appreciative of what they're doing.
You know, back to the statue real quick, Wizard of Oz. One of my favorite lines in the movie The Wizard of Oz is when they're sitting there with Annie M, and it's the three guys who end up being, you know, the characters later on in the movie. And one of them says, this reminds me of this. He goes, one of these days they're going to erect a statue to me in this town. And Andy M says, well, don't start posing for it now. And you've always been that guy. You don't want to pose for no statue, right? Did you actually pose for the statue, or did the statue maker, for want of another term, just take photos and stuff and make it?
No, he did photos. Actually, it was from the Sports Illustrated cover back in, I think it was 75. Yeah. It was from that Sports Illustrated cover. Pretty much is where he took that from. Yeah.
Wow.
And it's almost like I've got the Heisman stiff arm out.
Yeah.
But it wasn't quite that. But yeah.
Hey, last thing. How long do you think it's going to last? I mean, how many times have I asked you this question? How long are you going to be the incomparable two-time Heisman Trophy winner? How long do you think that's going to last in this? I think it has more of a chance of getting broken or getting tied, Arch, with the transfer portal and NIL opportunities now, right? Because you don't necessarily have to go to the NFL now to get your payday. Just what's your take on how long it's going to last?
Well, first of all, I agree with what you just said. I think it's a great chance that it will be at least tied, and who knows, maybe somebody will go even three of them, because you know you do see guys winning it as freshmen. Yeah. And now with the NIL, you know, you got a better chance of seeing young men stay with their universities. We had great examples of that this year at the Ohio State University, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. But do I think it's going to happen? Yeah, I thought it would have happened by now, Tim. And I think I've told you this many times. I thought it would have happened by now. I mean, there were plenty of guys who had won it in their junior year or sophomore year, and even the freshmen. Yeah. And had an opportunity to do it, but it just didn't happen. But it will happen. And the reason I say it will happen is I did it. So I know there's somebody else out there that can do it. Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see, ladies and gentlemen, because I'm telling you, he's dodged several bullets along the way. I thought Tim Tebow had the best chance because he won as a sophomore, and then he stuck around, you know, but didn't get it done. And right on down the line, there's been a bunch. Hey, my last question for you, because you stay up to date on Ohio State football, et cetera. Wait, no, I got two last questions for you. Number one, I've always wanted to ask you this on the record, and I'm going to ask you again. Do you regret's not the right term? Do you would you have liked to have had a shot of being the Ohio State athletic director at one point in your career? And there was one point when I thought there was a good chance you were going to be that guy because you know, you had worked in the program, you had visions of things. You know, you weren't sitting there, like I said, you've never rested on your laurels. That's, you know, that's one of the things that stands out about you. But now that's a two-part question. And the second part is, what do you think it's like being an athletic director now? It's got to be nuts, right? Well, go ahead. The first question. It does have to be nuts for athletic director. You got to be a strong athletic director to be successful. And I think we've got one at the Ohio State University. But yeah, at one time I did want to be the athletics director at Ohio State University. As a matter of fact, I interviewed for the job when Andy Geiger got the job. Right. But then I had that opportunity to take over the Alumni Association. And that became a job that I just absolutely loved. Having the opportunity to be with the Ohio State University alumni all over the world was a great position, was a great job. And we did some great things at the Alumni Association during that time. I had a great team that I worked with then too. So as you can imagine, teams very important to me. Yeah, but Arch, I'm just not sitting here blowing smoke, but that's when the Alumni Association really took off, in my opinion. I mean, in a lot of ways, that's when
Buckeye Nation, I thought, became a real deal, because when the Alumni Association president visited, different chapters around it wasn't just the Alumni Association president. It was the Alumni Association president and two-time Heisman Trophy winner, Archie Griffin, coming to town, right? I mean, did you feel it swell at that point? I mean, I think you can look back at the numbers and see it, right?
Well, yeah, but I've always felt that we've had a strong alumni association. I mean, always. I mean, I can remember when I was a student at Ohio State University, the alumni president would be on the plane with us, travel to games with us, and he would go to those towns where we play, and they'd get the folks who are alumni fired up about Ohio State University so that they would be there supporting the Buckeyes. And I wanted to do the kind of same thing with that, but we did all kind of things. We had all kind of programs for alumni, and they participated. I mean, our alumni was very, very strong. We had a strong board of directors at our alumni association, and I just felt great about it. And when I got that position, I wanted to be in that position. Yeah. That's where I wanted to stay. So I did not entertain going for an athletic director after that point.
Yeah. I was going to say, and you didn't just show up at your office and spin around in the chair 3 times and leave. I mean, that's what I liked about you.
That's right.
I mean, you took it serious. Last thing, speaking of taking it serious, what is the correct expectation for this Ohio State football team that's loaded with returnees, with guys bubbling up, with transfer portal acquisitions, which hit the points that they needed, and then with a ridiculous recruiting class that's stepping up, including that Jeremiah Smith. I mean, as celebrated a freshman as there's been since maybe Andy Katzenmoyer or Art Schleister. What is the correct expectation? Can it just be national championship, or you're a failure? It can't be that, right? But
it can't be that. What you want of this team is that they perform to their ability.
Yeah.
And you know what, Tim? If they perform to their ability, then everything else is going to take care of itself, because the talent, the coaching, all that's there, and we just got to see where it puts us. But this team, I think, is going to be truly outstanding, and I just want them to go out each game and perform to their ability. Yeah. And that's all they can expect. That's all they can do, actually. And if they do that, I think everything else is just going to fall into place.
I don't know if you were at the spring game. I'm trying to remember if you even there. You might have seen it on TV, but when Chip Kelly sends the offense out there for the first time and they jump into robust T, he gets it, right? I mean, number one, number two, this is a guy who was one of the reasons Ryan Day hired him is, number one, they're friends from a long time ago, but number two, Chip Kelly is a genius at the run game. I mean, at the run game, Arch. Right. We're talking about the run game again in modern college football. That's got to fire you up, right?
It really does, and the running backs that we've got fires me up as well. I mean, I'm looking forward to watching those guys perform. I think they're going to be truly outstanding, and it's going to be special for our fans to see. Buckeye Nation, I think, will be very, very proud.
There you go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's Archie Griffin. If he had to dot the I's in his name, he'd need 3 dots, but you only need 1 when it comes to Ohio, or 1 when it comes to incomparable. Archie Griffin, once again, thanks for joining the Tim May Show, my man.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate you having me on. Go Bucks.
I euphemistically say, Matt Wilhelm, that Archie Griffin is dotting the I in Ohio, but also he's dotting the I in incomparable. There's only 1 two-time Heisman Trophy winner, and what a forever one of the classier human beings you're ever going to run into. Am I correct?
You're absolutely correct, and I think both of these amazing celebrations of dotting the I and receiving the statue in the rotunda at Ohio Stadium are long overdue for Archie. At any juncture, whether it's Andy Geiger or Gene Smith, and now what is it?
Ross Bjork,
Bjork has come in and really spearheaded this, which I think is fantastic. It is long overdue, and I think given my experience at Ohio State, as a recruit, and then as a player, and then coming back as a former player, Archie's he's always around. He is just he's the equivalent to what Woody Hayes represents in Ohio State football from a coaching standpoint, what Jim Tressel and what Urban Meyer. It's like they're almost like one of one or one of few players. And I think there is an immense sense of pride around the country, and for me, especially having traveled and played with guys from other places whose their quarterback or running back or receiver might have, won the Heisman, or someone at their school, Oklahoma or Alabama have won the Heisman, but they've only done it one time.
Yeah.
And so while we walk around with our chests out and our head held high as Buckeyes, to say that you have the only two-time Heisman winner, something extremely special. And again, to your point, humble, high character guy that you want to spend as much time as you can with, who's around those players and those coaches an awful lot, is Archie Griffin.
Well put, man. Every time you're around Arch, you don't want it to end. I mean, he's just a great, I mean, I don't know how to explain. He's just a great guy is the best way of explaining it. I mean, he's engaged with you when you're having a conversation with him. He's not looking over his shoulder, heading elsewhere. I mean, just right on down the line. He's intelligent. Just you can have a conversation with him about a lot of things. But you may have heard me say this to him in my conversation with him a minute ago, is that I've always thought Ohio State has missed the boat here on having a pantheon, what I call it a pantheon of from Woody Hayes Drive to the entrance there of the rotunda. You could have statues of your national championship winning coaches and your Heisman Trophy winners, and maybe throw in Chick Harley and Bill Willis, two great, is that stadium even there without Chick Harley, the house that Harley built, and he never got to play in it. And then, of course, Bill Willis, just kind of reset things in a lot of ways with his playing there at Ohio State before he went on to the Cleveland Browns. But you could, that would be quite an impressive row of statues, or gauntlet of statues to walk through on your way into the grand entrance of that stadium, wouldn't it?
It absolutely would. And I think, for me as a former player, not only, having played at Ohio State, but the one thing that I personally take some of the most pride in, and I have, every time folks come in for a game and I'm able to host them, is I walk them pridefully to Buckeye Grove and show them, my, All-American Buckeye tree. But then when they walk, those bricks, and they just see just the number of players, and it's not just like hit and miss, it's every year, multiple All-Americans did something extremely special in the scarlet and gray after a specific tenure of years. A lot of those guys went on to the National Football League, and they kind of continued their football journey and continued those football memories for Buckeye fans. So the following is immense. No, but you're right. Every time you come to one of those, All-American bricks and those Buckeye trees, you're like, that dude was like it should be like 4D, and the 4D equivalent in 2024 is, to your point, like erecting a statue or just being celebrated in a way larger, than a guy like me who was an All-American too, just because of, again, they move the needle in some way in an capacity as a player and or a coach, and they need to be honored. And I think, who knows, maybe Archie's the first of a half dozen of, statues that are going to be erected in the next decade or 15 years of Ohio State football, which will only add to, the lore of visiting an Ohio State football game and seeing a game at the Horseshoe.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the statue of Red Grange outside Illinois Memorial Stadium, I mean, you're just attracted to it because, I mean, this is a guy from way back when, who, by the way, his last, I think, college football game was in Ohio Stadium. He signed his contract. I think it was with the Bears or whoever it was, in the south end of the end zone down there in Ohio Stadium of all places. But Red Grange, a name everybody knows, et cetera. It should be that way at Ohio Stadium. I just remember the Ohio State at Oklahoma game way back, 2016, I think it was. But the game there, I hadn't been to that stadium in a long time, and they've got their Heisman winners statues arrayed out on the east side, outside the east side of the stadium, and it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, they do. And I think that if I'm not mistaken, I think Kyler Murray, and it's almost like within a year because
Yeah.
they've started the tradition of doing them. Baker Mayfield got one, and then Kyler Murray won it, that very next year.
Yeah.
And, it's like within a year, and I just remember seeing it on social media that, there's a statue of Kyler Murray. Now we as, sometimes Buckeye fans, you like, especially with probably what he's done in the National Football League, which is not much. You're like, does that guy really deserve a statue? But at that school in those years, what it meant to to Oklahoma football is immense, and that's why he's there being celebrated. And I think there are and you don't just want to like rattle off a dozen guys that need a statue, but are there 6 that you can rattle off very quickly that deserve one as former Buckeyes or Buckeye coaches? I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the national championship coaches, Paul Brown, Woody Hayes, Jim Tressel, and Urban Meyer, and then the Heisman Trophy winners. Now you got yourself. I think you might have a starting lineup right there.
Well, Woody's got his
But-
outside the Woody.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'd have to take that and throw it over by the Horseshoe.
Yeah, or just come up with another one. I mean, what the heck? You never know when somebody's gonna get naming rights and maybe put their statue up. No, I'm just joking. I don't want to go there right now. I don't want to go there right now. Speaking of getting fired up for football, let's get to my quick conversation with Mecca Don, man. He's come up with another anthem for Ohio State football. And just kind of, he's a former walk-on player, basically back during your time, Matt. You know Mecca Don pretty well. And he's came up with this Buckle Up theme song, or anthem for want of another term, that the Ohio State Ohio State football media folks put to video, and it has been quite the hit. I mean, I know you've seen it and stuff, but you remember Mecca Don, right?
I do remember Mecca Don. Mecca Don was, again, as you said, in my era of football, was a walk-on. Massive smile, a great energy. Not a surprise that he's kind of parlayed, his life into being an entertainer, because of the way he lived and the way he walked around campus and the Woody.
Yeah.
And I think Juice, was one that he came out with, I think, during the Urban era, which was that the team kind of employed, in certain times within the stadium and especially in practice. And I think Buckle Up is so fitting because, in some cases you could say buckle up, it's going to be a bumpy ride, but it's like buckle up because like we're going to take this ship to the moon, and we're going to take off.
Yeah.
And it's going to be extremely entertaining both on both sides of the ball. So it's a fitting song for this upcoming season.
Well, let's get to my conversation with Mecca Don. It includes, by the way, a drop-in of that video, which is pretty sweet. This is Mecca Don. Oh my goodness. I've been wanting to have this young man on. Yeah, you're still a young man, Mecca Don, at least relatively speaking, compared to me. But Mecca Don, ladies and gentlemen, joins the Tim May Show. Why haven't I had you on before? Because we've talked about hooking up for what, 5 years now, haven't we? 6 years, ever since I started a podcast.
Ever since you retired.
Yeah, ever since I retired. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, all good. I think, everything comes at the right timing. So I'm happy to be here now. Thanks.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you music moguls, man, y'all have to keep the shells moving. Hey, Mecca Don, real quick. You remember I had you on as a guest on the radio show several weeks ago, also on 97.1 The Fan. But I want to get into it again. What was the inspiration, and how did it come to you for this latest, shall I call it greatest, but let's call it the latest, one of the greatest, there we go, one of your greater videos, Buckle Down when it comes,
Buckle up.
Buckle Up. I knew I was going to screw that up.
All
I knew I was
good.
going to screw that down,
All right.
up. Buckle up for Ohio State going into this 2024 season. Because, I mean, you're you're a big time fan, but you're also an observer of the scene. And I think you've got the same kind of fever for this 2024 team as a lot of fans do, don't you?
Yeah, 100%. I think, the last time I did a song for the Buckeyes was probably 8 to 10 years ago. And I tell people a lot, like, the reason why I paused, so to speak, was because I didn't want people to start just associating that with me only and my brand, and I become like a caricature or just like a kind of the Buckeye mascot. And so I didn't want people to take it for granted. And then also I want to be inspired when I do stuff like this as an artist or a creator. I think you want the inspiration to come and you want it to come naturally. So I think it was probably in late winter, early spring, where I started kind of, paying attention to what was going on and camp and winter and what was happening in the spring. And I started just analyzing kind of the situation. And I looked back and I said, wait, Emeka came back, Travion came back, JTT came back, Denzel came back. These are all guys that were going to not only be draft picks, but potentially early draft picks. And they all came back. That was special to me. Then you start looking around and you see, okay, Caleb Downs, you see Will Howard, and you see Quinshon Judkins coming to Ohio State. And I understand NIL has something to do with that. I'm not naive, but I also understand that Ohio State was building something that felt special. And then you got Chip Kelly coming in and start analyzing some of this stuff. I said, wait, this feels a little different, right? This feels, when you have guys that can go, but they're coming back because they know that there's really been unfinished business. There's something special happening here. And I think that kind of energy, then starting looking around at kind of the Buckeye fans' energy. And there's a lot of angst and anxiety. And we lost the team up north 3 years in a row. And, Ryan Day, the guy, and kind of, just that excitement to get back into the season. It just felt right. The timing really, really felt right to kind of create something that could kind of capture all of that in one thing.
Yeah. I kind of hear in your chemistry set where you put songs together in your head and then put them together on, write them down or whatever you do. I can hear it bubbling right now as you're talking. I mean, in the background, is it,
100%.
What is the heart? This is going to sound funny because, you've heard about great songs that have come along. I think this is really good, by the way. We're going to play it in just a second on here. But what is it about? Do the best things that come song wise or production wise, do they come like just almost in a flash? Have you found, you understand what I'm saying? I mean, when you sit down and say, I'm going to write a hit today.
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily work that way, right? I mean, you could be walking down the street in New York or Columbus or wherever, and all of a sudden it just hits you, right?
That's exactly how it happens. It's very rare that you sit down and say, hey, I'm going to write a hit, and then it becomes a hit, right? Most of the time, you could be literally on the toilet, in the shower, you could be in a meeting with somebody else, talking about something totally different, and the idea just comes to your head. And I think for me, I don't think I said, okay, I'm going to write a Buckeye song, but I started to feel the energy for it.
Yeah.
And then I don't remember exactly how it happened, but the term buckle up came in to my mind. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is so perfect for so many reasons. Obviously the double entendre with having the word buck in it. Right. And then, and Buckeyes, and then, but also just kind of like, let's go. We're going for a ride. This is coming. This train is coming. And, I think if, certain people look at Ohio State and we're spoiled as a fan base, and understandably so in some ways, and they say, it looks like we haven't had success. But if you look at it, man, we've been one play here, one play there from probably a national title. And then also even last year, one play, probably then if Kyle McCord doesn't get hit on that last throw, who knows? Marvin might walk in the end zone and maybe a totally different outcome. So we've been right there, even though it doesn't feel like it to some people. And so I feel like buckle up kind of really, really encapsulated what I think is going to happen this season.
Yeah. Before we play it, I wanted to ask you this though, because you're a big time Ohio State fan. You were a player. Would you say you were a player of some repute? How would you describe your football career?
Very nondescript. In fact, I don't even if I list 10 things about myself, that's probably not even in the top 10. And not that I, disrespect what I did, but I was, a preferred walk-on. I didn't play for more than a season and a half. I'd only played football 1 year in high school. Yeah. Football was not like my dream growing up necessarily. I was in some ways, very fortunate to even be given that opportunity. So, I respect that aspect of my life and that part of me being a part of the brotherhood, but I understand where I am on the totem pole. You're not going to hear me, lead with that. And I had a lot of teammates and even people that I've met since then, players currently on the team. I want to make sure when we talk about Ohio State football, these are the guys that we're putting up at the top.
Oh yeah.
But that all being said, I'm very proud of the fact that I was able to suit up for the Buckeyes. It is something that is a part of my history and my resume, so I'm not going to shy away from it, but I don't lead with that at all. I think I've done a lot more that
I know you don't. Yeah, absolutely. I know you don't do that, but I always have respect for anybody who shows up, puts on the pads and goes out there for a practice, much less become a hero in a game, because you know what I'm talking about. They call it a blood sport for a reason, And,
absolutely. And it was tough, man. That's the other thing. I look back on that part of my life and I remember, those 6 a.m. workouts in the winter. I remember summer conditioning. I remember, going to practice and then trying to balance that with school, right? Because I was on an academic scholarship,
Yeah.
and so balancing all of those things, having to schedule certain classes before a certain time to make sure that you're at practice, and getting knocked around by guys 2 times your size, and just learning the game and the fast pace, and being around NFL talent. Mike Doss, that was my class. I came in with Mike Doss and Matt Wilhelm and Craig Renzel. That's my class. And then you had guys like Nate Clements on the team and guys that you knew were going pro right away. So yeah, it was real, man. It was a real part of my life, and I don't mean to trivialize it or sound like I am, but I also want to make sure I give respect to the guys that would really, really, help build the Ohio State brand.
Hey, real quick, I keep saying before we go to your video, but I do want to throw this in there, ask you about this. It is amazing, like I always said, different players progress at different speeds. You know what I mean? Like Tigger Shabola, who knows? He may be the starting right guard, but it's taking him a little bit of even though he like maybe the opposite of you from the standpoint of size. Obviously, he is. It'd be before and after if they put y'all together in a photo. You know who Tigger Shabola is? He's looked the part since he got here and stuff, but that's not a given. I mean, everybody progresses at their own rate, right? And see, that's what's intriguing me about this team. And I want to get your take on this. You got the transfer portal dudes. Hey, everybody can be viable in the transfer portal. All you got to do is get your NIL stuff together, right? I almost said a bad word there, but you get all those guys. You get the Jeremiah Smith coming in, maybe as good a receiver as I've ever seen. Right off the cuff since Chris Carter, might be better. I guess we'll find out, right on down the line. You get the guys who came back, like you said, like JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer, Denzel Burke, Donovan Jackson around down the line. But then you got these guys who are bubbling up who've been in the program. And that's what's interesting, intriguing about this team, isn't it? I mean, it's as solid from top to bottom of a roster as you could dream to put together in the modern transfer portal, NIL, leave for the NFL age, right?
100%. And then a guy like CJ Hicks, right? A guy who's been the part, who's a pop star coming out, and right. And now you're hearing about him as being like the sack master on the team, so there's that. And I was listening actually to Tom Brady last week and him kind of talk about this in the NFL. It seems as though like there's not a patience for people to actually develop, for players to actually develop. And that is part of this game. And you even see, Troy Smith and Teddy Ginn kind of talking about this on social media as well. Like, we don't always have to have 5-star guys. There are other guys that are talented, that are hungry, that can develop into stars in time. We have that throughout the history of Ohio State. Some of the legends that we had, Eddie George, he fumbled 3 times his freshman year, and and went on to win the Heisman to be one of the best. So I think that what I like about this team, to kind of answer your question, is there's a mixture of the guys who are just flat out ready, right? The guys who are flat out stars, who've been stars, and guys who've been allowed and given time to develop. Carnell Tate, for example, is a guy that I think is going to explode on the scene this year. And I love that we have kind of that mixture. So you have and then these guys are now pushing each other, right? Yeah. And it seems like just a lot of things are clicking at the right time. So I'm excited.
Speaking of clicking, hey, let's play Buckle Up. For the fans, for the few folks who maybe haven't heard it, seen it, it's actually heard it and seen it, or maybe want to see it again, or maybe want to watch it again and again. Let's get to that right now.
Mecca, Dome, Buckeye Nation. It's time.
D-Bots, you beat.
Buckle up. Buckle up, we going for a ride. Knuckle up, it's time for a fight. Buckle up, this time it's mine. Buckle up, oh, we outside. Going to the top, 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 going to the top. Still dope from the past to the present. If you hating, let me say it, man, please don't try that. Make it dawn, man, come along. I can see the future and we like that, like that. Sorry, little homies, y'all not like us. Cause the whole city rockin' can't rock like us. It's a whole brotherhood and the family matter. Can't block, can't chop like us. It's us first, them, and it's them versus us. And they talk real big, but we call they bluff. See, everything war won't call no truth. Don't ever get it wrong, still got that juice. They spit on, kicked us, laughed and just us. Hail to the Buckeyes, we're the victors. Here's a gift in early Christmas. Going back up, I know you missed us. O-H-I-O. 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 Buckle up, buckle up. We going for a ride. Knuckle up, knuckle up. It's time for a fight. Buckle up, buckle up. This time it's mine. Buckle up, buckle up. Oh, we outside. Going to the top. 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 There's several different levels to the game. Yeah, I see new money acting brand new, man. We've been superheroes to the game. Wolverine never could fit in our shoe. This is our shoe. One step, two step, ain't no mercy. Matter of fact, who's next? Get your whole crew stretched. Blue dead, blue buds, move us up back where we belong. This is our song. Buckle up, baby. The Bucks up, baby. Ain't no maybe. Ever seen 100,000 fans go crazy? Ever seen 100,000 fans go crazy? Stop on state? Not today. You know we got a couple more million on the way. Block okay, it's our day. You know we got a couple more chips on the way. It's really so fun and they don't want none. Duck hunt, duck hunt. It's really so fun and they don't want none. Man down, run for your life. It's really so fun and they don't want none. You're not betting with us, then you gotta be dumb. This is our time and it's time for a run. Buckle up, buckle up, buckle up. We going for a ride. Knuckle up, knuckle up. It's time for a fight. Buckle up, buckle up. This time it's mine. Buckle up, buckle up. Oh, we outside. Hey, going to the top. Going to the top. Buckeye Nation. Going to the top. Y'all ready? Going to the top. I'm ready.
As you look at that video again,
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, Mecca, what part are you most proud of about, you know, how anybody who makes a movie, there's probably parts they would like to do again, parts that they go, I can't make it any better than that. But you understand what I'm saying? When you watch it, is it hard to watch? Because you know what went into it from the standpoint of the effort. You know where the flaws are. To me, it seems literally like a flawless almost kind of production. What is your take on that?
Tim, you know, as humbly as I can say this, I agree with you. And just full disclosure, I didn't make the video. Ohio State football department made the video.
Right.
Super talented. When I saw that video for the first time, I like almost cried. I was like, this is like watching a Hollywood production. If I could have, and yes, I gave my notes and gave my kind of a storyboard for what I wanted it to look like, but then I also gave him a lot of creative liberty. And when it came back, I said, oh my gosh, this encapsulated even better than I could have ever imagined what I was trying to encapsulate and buckle up. And so, yeah, I look at that as essentially a flawless product. And that is, you know, sometimes you just, as a creative, you have to just say it, right? I don't say that all the time. I'm very critical of my stuff. You're spot on with that. I can listen to something or watch something and be like, oh man, and one part comes up and I just don't want to watch it because I'm like, God, I wish I would have moved a little bit to the side, you know, or whatever. But this one, I mean, it was executed perfectly. And honestly, the results kind of show it. Over 1 million impressions in the first month. Just the video, you know what I mean? So like, it kind of speaks for itself.
You know, it also speaks to the anticipation of this season, right? I mean, you know, gosh, if I get asked one more time, well, now I don't have to get asked who the starting quarterback's going to be because Will Howard's been named that. You understand? How are these guys going to do against Michigan? I have no idea. I think it's going to be a turnaround in that. You understand what I'm saying? You got to the impatience by the fans, and I understand it. I grew up I grew up in Alabama and in Texas. I went to Alabama home games in you know, from 1961 through 64. I mean, you know, Joe Namath, I saw him play on two good knees. You understand what I'm saying? The anticipation for a college football season, is rivaled only maybe by the anticipation for an NFL season. And I think it's over and above because Ohio State has fans everywhere. I mean, Buckeye Nation, it's really Buckeye International is what it is in a lot. I mean, I know people download this little show I do, across the globe, and because they want to be part of it, feel it. But the main thing they want is for the season to get underway, right?
Yes, 100%. I mean, because first of all, the other sports, baseball, for example, basketball, much longer seasons, much shorter off seasons, right?
Yeah.
So football, a lot of times, if your season ends, let's say you're not going to playoffs, your season kind of ends in December. Yeah, you might play a little bowl game, but kind of ends in December. And then your next game isn't all the way to about 9 months from then, right? Yeah. So it's that the anticipation that builds is crazy. And then what also happens in the off season is now people start analyzing everything. You have time to like, how did we do in the bowl game? How did we look in winter practice? Did such and such show up in spring practice and then summer? And then you have all of these different seasons literally that you're going through. And then if your season didn't end the way you wanted it to, and you lost to your rival, for example, and this the third time, or if it ended in disappointment, like the Clemson loss, which still kills us, right? The way that game happened.
Yeah.
You have to wait a long time to kind of get your lick back or your revenge or whatever you call it. So yeah, I mean, the anticipation builds, and then you couple that with the season not ending the way you want it to and wanting to get your revenge. Oh boy, it could feel like a long off season, and people are chomping at the bit right now.
All right, last thing. Like I said, you're a super fan, but you got insight. Guys. What is your sense? I'll ask you the question everybody asks me. What is your sense about this team? Does it make that run? I mean, it's like I keep telling people, college football, just when you think you got it figured out, Michigan State, 2015 upsets Ohio State in Ohio Stadium with a third string quarterback. Are you kidding me? It's like Ohio State forgot its game plan. I mean, I think Urban Meyer, if he is really honest, will tell you that game has to hurt as much as any loss in his career. Because that was the carryover from 2014, which I thought 2015 was a better team, after they figured out the quarterback situation and went back to JT Barrett. But what is your sense? This team clearly has the makeup to make the run, but Mecca Don, we're talking about minimum 16 games to win a national championship. Mm-hmm. You were in the locker room. You were on the practice field as a player long ago. That's a lot of wear and tear on a college football roster, no matter how well it's stacked, right?
Yeah. So I think a couple of things. First of all, let me just make a quick point on your 2015 Michigan State game. If you remember the early parts of that season, we didn't have the mojo in any of those games that we really should have had. We won those games I remember one game was like 40-20, probably against Western Michigan, something like that. But it didn't feel like anything was truly clicking. So yes, that was a tough loss. Obviously, talent-wise, it was maybe the best team we ever had. But the mojo wasn't there like it was in 2014, and the energy wasn't there with that team the same way. The difference between that and now, again, we haven't played games yet, so some of this remains to be seen. Because I feel like the energy is there, the hunger is there. I don't feel like the hunger was there in 2015 like it was in 2014. This reminds me a little bit more of 2014 in terms of just the energy, right? We have something to prove. We have a chip on our shoulder. We feel disrespected.
There you go.
So I feel like that's there. Now, the other thing I think is super important, and you talk about this a little bit, is roster construction. Now you're talking about the type of depth that you need to have because, we pray for a great season in health, but we all know that injuries are going to happen. What's going to happen? JT Barrett got injured in that year that we won the national championship. What's going to happen when that happens? And you have to have depth. And one of the things that I think we have built at most positions, specifically in the secondary, running back, we're a little thin because we've had a couple injuries there, but I do think someone like James Peoples can be very productive. But what's that going to look like? How roster management throughout the year, redshirting guys now, freshmen, bringing in new players that haven't played a ton yet and getting them some experience so they can be ready for the playoff run. Those are all types of things that they didn't have to deal with before that they're going to have to manage now. Yeah. So from a talent perspective, we have it, right? We don't know what health is going to be, so we can't really predict that. But from a talent perspective, we have it. From a depth perspective, we have it. I think Chip Kelly adds an amazing element to this. It's not just X's and O's. To me, I think more than anything, he brings that veteran presence that Ryan Day respects and has to respect, the person that could tell Ryan, no, we're not doing that, and Ryan will listen. I think that's important to have that type of presence, on your team, especially when you're kind of a CEO. So I think we have all the makeup that it takes. But once you get to the end, honestly, I mean, in a one-game scenario, it's kind of like the NFL playoffs, man. You're going to be up against Georgias and the Oregons and all the other type of teams that have top talent as well. And who's to say you can't lose a close game? So I can't say, oh, we're going to run the table. No, there are other teams out there that are really good, but we are going to be in position by the end of this season for sure.
Last question. You can only give me one answer here now. Don't go all the way around the bush three times.
All right.
No, you can do whatever you want, man. You're Mecca. Pete, that's an homage to Pee Wee Herman. What is the one thing about this team that excites you the most that you want to watch? I'm going to give you my answer first, okay? And if you agree with me, that's great. But I want to tell you something. I remember back, I was watching Ohio State before I ever moved to Ohio, man, when I was living in Texas. That 1973 defense was cutthroat. Would get after you. That entire team, that in my opinion, that was Woody Hayes' best team. They didn't win a national championship. We all know, what happened that year. But my point was their defense was so fun to watch play because it usually only played 3 or 4 plays at a time and then went to the bench. You know what I mean? But the defense is what, if that's the right term, excites me about this team. I am very much looking forward to how a veteran front four with these kind of new look linebackers behind them, Sonny Styles and CJ Hicks that you mentioned a while ago, along with starter and block O bearer, Cody Simon play. And then I'm telling you, as talented a secondary, whether you put 5 of them on the field at three corners and 2 safeties, or whatever they end up deploying as talented a defensive secondary as I've covered at Ohio State. I'm talking about from a total 5 basis.
Yep.
That's because man, everybody strives for that championship defense. That line that defenses win championships is baloney because you got to score, right? But defenses put you in position to win championships. So that's my take. What's your take?
Well, I was going to say the secondary because.
Oh man, well go ahead. Go expound on that.
It is. And listen, we've had some real serious secondaries at Ohio State.
Yeah.
Even as recently as, the Garyon Conley, Marshawn Lattimore, Denzel Ward, Malik Hooker, right? But
all those guys had to grow into it too. You know what I mean?
Yes.
They all had their growing pains. Go ahead.
And these guys have attitude, which I love. They have confidence. They go after it. They're not just, prima donnas. They'll tackle, they'll hit you. They'll go for it. But because you said that, and I know I kind of cheated a little bit, but I'm going to go to the running backs, man. To have Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, it almost feels like a joke. Seriously, these guys are studs individually. Studs. Any team in the country would be so grateful to even have one of them.
Yeah.
To have 2 of these guys, come on, man. It's almost like a cheat code. That is just, I can't wait for that. And then also with Chip Kelly and some of his run concepts and just, I just can't wait to see what that actually looks like. To be honest, I wouldn't have been as excited about it, even with the talent, if Chip wasn't there. Right.
Yeah.
I don't like the way our run concepts in the last few years. I just haven't liked it. It felt like we ran the ball just to say we were running it, not really because it was part of what we were trying to do.
Yeah.
Now it has to be.
It's integrated now. It's integrated. And it's really funny because I had Gary Danielson from CBS, sports analyst for game analysts and stuff. And he on my podcast last week of the Tim May Show. And he said he thought the Chip Kelly hire was the greatest or biggest hire from a coaching standpoint, other than a head coach, biggest hire in the nation, just on what he brings, but what Ohio State needs, which is that consistent running attack that has some savvy to it. And the great thing is, about Chip Kelly is, a lot of people talk about creating space for receivers, getting receivers open. If you watch him and watch his videos, the way he creates space for his running backs is ridiculous. He is, if there's a genius there, it's that, but he is He's an innovator. He's to a certain extent, a creator. And I totally agree with you, man. I mean, is it going to work? As Ryan Day said in a little story I wrote about that, he goes, time will, we'll see.
Yeah.
The preseason is all for this kind of like hoopla, this hyperbole. But when they line up against Akron and then move on down the line, does this running attack, does it produce like they think it can, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess one last thing that one underrated part of this conversation is also how we project the offensive line to be, which is a lot better than I think 4 months ago what we were thinking. And so that's another thing is I don't know if Chip Kelly pretty much in his college career has ever had an offensive line like this as well to also help, create some of those running lanes and some of those concepts too. So I think if, again, there's a lot of preseason talk, like you said, and it has to be done on the field. I think we all understand that. But just judging by what it looks like, this could be really, really special. So buckle up. I'm excited.
There you go. I love that. I love that reference to the earlier video we just played on here. And ladies and gentlemen, I mean, play it again. It's really fun to listen to. I mean, I love college football, not just Ohio State football, not just Alabama football, whatever is in my background. A lot of Texas stuff, except I never liked the University of Texas. But that's another story for another day. But I love it. And when a guy can capture it like Mecca Don did in this song, and then the like you said, the Ohio State production staff put together the video. Wow. The goosebumps, right? That's what you're looking for, right?
Give a couple quick shout outs too, if you don't mind. So make sure, you got obviously Buckle Up will play at every home game in the stadium. So listen out for that. Go download it, stream it. It's on all streaming platforms. Watch the video of Mecca Don Music on my YouTube. And then we also released official Ohio State Buckle Up merchandise with legends that just dropped online, gobuckeyes.com, and it will be sold in the stadium. So make sure you grab that too. But yeah, man, this is the season. And I can't wait. And I can't wait. So thanks for having me, Tim. I really appreciate it.
Mecca Don, man, let's do it again sooner rather than later. Cause I mean, golly, this is the plane flight that you kept getting delayed, like we were in Charlotte trying to make a connection, right?
Oh my gosh, the worst place ever.
Absolutely. Just ask my daughter, man. But you always gotta push for reparations when things don't go your way, man. They owe it to you.
A few times. I've been stuck in Charlotte a few times, man. So I know.
There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, the incomparable Mecca Don. Thanks for joining the Tim May Show, brother.
No problem. Have a good one, and let's go Bucks. Buckle up.
Oh, I appreciate Mecca Don sitting down with me. That was a long time coming. He and I've talked about him coming on the Tim May Show. Even the Tim May podcast was called that long ago, but it finally happened. And man, I really do like that video. I'm not just pandering here. It's like he said, you don't do one every year because you got to feel it, right? And you can feel that one, right, Matt?
Oh, you absolutely feel it. And I think it's, in some cases on social media, we're used to, folks sitting at home and chopping up Ohio State highlights with whatever music they choose to put behind it. And even that makes your hair stand up and get you ready for football. But to have a former player embraced by the university, embraced by the players and coaches to put this together, and it's, to have it, kind of like produced professionally. And also written, by Mecca Don, and the interjection of players and things about Ohio State history is extremely unique. And that's what makes Mecca Don Mecca Don.
Yep, absolutely. Mecca Don, Mecca Don, Mecca Don. I was doing a Pee Wee Herman with. I can't get that third Mecca out. Mecca. There we go. Anyway, let's get into this real quick. Now, the nuts and bolts about this football team. Well, let's start where you played.
Sure.
To me, a decent question mark. The only question mark in my mind going into preseason was who was going to be that will linebacker, who was going to step up. But they're going to play guys. I mean, James Laurinaitis has said that if you're deserving to play, we're going to play you because it's going to be a 16-game season. You can't just wear people out. But it looks like Sonny Styles is going to be that guy at will linebacker. But with C.J. Hicks in the house, et cetera, they're both going to play. And then Cody Simon, which you've got to take a lot of pride in, gets that Block O jersey, the starting Mike linebacker, the returning real veteran of the group at linebacker. But just in a nutshell, what's your take on the linebacker spot? Did they get it figured out correctly?
I think they have. And I think it goes back to, kind of what I mentioned about the depth of many different position groups. And in this case, we're talking about the linebackers, where you have your guy and what you think is your other guy, in this Jim Knowles 4-2-5. But early in the season, I'm not saying they're going to rotate by every series, but you can go, half of football, get ahead and get significant game experience for these young, hungry guys, playing in structure, which is, Jim Knowles' defense, and making plays, or not making plays. And I think for me, there were eras of Ohio State football where we would go out and get these highly touted linebacker recruits. And of course, as a linebacker and, following the recruiting the way I did, I get so excited. I can't wait to see, and you rattle off all these names of guys that you acquire from all over, the United States to come to Ohio State to play linebacker. They've got all the intangibles. They're a 4-star, they're a 5-star, 6'3", 225, does this, does that, 100 some tackles. And you're like, oh man, I can't wait to see him in the Buckeye uniform. And he's just like, for whatever reason, it never clicked for him, and he's never been able to show out and practice enough to be able to get on the field, which is frustrating. So, this is kind of like a little bit of a perfect storm. We've got Cody Simon, who's like the equivalent to your Matt Wilhelm, your AJ Hawk, your James Laurinaitis, your Josh Perry, your Tommy Eichenberg type of player who's like experienced vet, kind of like carrying the room with his actions and his words. And then you've got these immensely talented players around you that aren't going to play perfect because they haven't played a lot of football, or playing or doing something new, to your point about Sonny Styles, coming down into the box and being a full-time linebacker and having to take on offensive linemen and cover and run with tight ends, something that he's probably never done all in one game before. It's just one or the other.
Yeah.
And then, the Arvell Reese and the CJ Hicks, these guys that you're so excited about when they come here. And you're so excited in the offseason when you see, Ohio State put out these amazingly produced, weightlifting training sessions about, oh my God, this guy's going to be a monster, and then in pass, they have faded into, to darkness, and you play the guys that you trust. But in this case, you have multiple talented guys who've worked extremely hard, that their time has come. And I think it's also another gift to have the games that we have early in the season, to get all of these guys game reps, their mental preparation, their ability to go out there. And I think, and also there's something to be said about, and it's unique about Ohio State and a few other places just like it, that you're humbled by the depth and the talent and elite talent at a school like Ohio State, where you come in as a 4-star, 5-star, and you've never come off the field, and all you've known is notoriety and love and hype and playmaking, and then you have to just sit and watch and run down on kickoff when you think you're better than running down on kickoff, or running back and blocking, a guy on kickoff return, and so on. And then you get to this day when you're 2-3 years into the program. There's been an immense amount of investment by you, an immense amount of investment by the coaches and the strength staff to get you to where you're at. And now it all hits, and you go ball in a Buckeye uniform.
Yeah. I mean, the excitement level's got to be off the chart for those guys, though. I mean, here's my point, Matt, I've made. Everybody keeps talking about this offense, and Will Howard, in my opinion, is a linchpin, because I think they figured out right guard. They're going to have Tegra Shabola, Carson Hinsman. Somebody's going to be really good at that right guard spot. I think the offensive line, is going to have that big bounce back, because let's face it, forget about the memory of the last play against Michigan, the memory of the Cotton Bowl when they were incompetent. The offensive line was incompetent, but there was a lot going on there. But the talent, I do believe, is there to be a very good unit. We'll see if it turns out to be a great unit. But how Will Howard plays, so the offense will play, I do believe. And I've seen him take strides. But what I wanted to get to with you is, people keep asking me, what are you fired up about watching? I said, I'm fired up about watching this defense play, because this is a veteran-laden unit that was only helped by the transfer portal. When you get Caleb Downs, might be the best safety in college football. Forget about the best player available in the transfer portal after Nick Saban retired, and teaming him up with Lathan Ransom, who was headed to being, in my opinion, the best safety in the Big Ten last year before he hopped off the field there against Wisconsin near the end and, was banged up and couldn't play again the rest of the year. I just think from the front with Tui Moloau and Jack Sawyer and the two ties, TNT as they're calling themselves, Tyleek Williams and Ty Hamilton, to the middle, like we just talked about the linebackers, to the secondary that has Denzel Burke back, that has Davis and Igbinosun. Jordan Hancock may be the most underrated player on the
Agreed.
defense, although he's starting to get some love now. And then, of course, those two safeties, that's just your starters. Forget about
Yeah.
Jermaine Matthews, your fourth corner or third corner, whatever you want to call him. I mean, this has a chance to be, in the modern era now, a shutdown unit. Do you agree?
I definitely agree. And I think that, the Matthews kid, it allows you the flexibility of, while we want to stay in that nickel defense in certain passing situations, you go to dime and you bring in, not just a guy, but another elite corner, and you take a lot off and you can cover long. And I think, and again, I think it's also been a little bit redundant from me. It was great to see Jack Sawyer come on the way he did, late season last year. But it all starts up front. And for me, we talked about the backers. I think the secondary will be, elite, as you just kind of showcased. But I'm going to put the pressure on those guys up front. The couple of five, 3 5-stars, and a 4-star guy that are now in their 3rd or 4th year in our program. Or
you don't get that. You don't get that anymore. Go ahead.
You don't get that. And I think that's the one thing that, I think Jack Sawyer flashed his consistency capabilities on making plays and making impact plays on the back half of last year's football team. But, the yin and yang and having JTT on one side and Sawyer on the other, like, that's got to pay dividends each and every week. And what does that mean? Some fans will look at it as straight production, stacked, okay, tackles for losses. And or the couple of games that JTT has where he just explodes, right?
Yeah.
You want that almost every week, which is not realistic. But where you layer in football and you really get to understand is, like, you force the pressure from those 4, and especially those 2 outside guys. You force the quarterback to be uncomfortable. He's getting hit, hurried, or sacked, on every drop back pass.
Yeah.
You force him to speed up his rhythm because they're bearing down on you. You also stress the offensive line by going, well, are we going to slide protect? Who are we going to put in one-on-one blocking with these guys? Because on paper, to your point, and I think even go back to past history, it's like we'll win those one-on-one matchups, and we kind of always have. And I think that's why there's pressure on those guys to deliver, which will only, and then again, it's a domino effect, is like, if they can do that, it makes life easier on the backers and safeties and corners to not have to cover 4, 5, 6, 7 seconds on the back end. They can be, have eye discipline, and they can jump routes, because the quarterback shaking in his boots, getting rid of the football prior, to getting to his timing. Yeah. And I think it forces an offensive coordinator to go, well, how do you attack this defense?
Yeah.
How do you practice all week and go, okay, we got a playmaker or 2, but this is Ohio State, and we're going to try to force feed them the football, which we know who else is going to have to step up to make plays, and how do we attack this defense on a week in, week out basis? And I think that's the biggest challenge, because at least on paper and what we're expecting of this defense, maybe not early, but as they really develop and get into a rhythm, there's no chink in this armor. There's nobody that an offense can say, we're going to attack this guy for this reason.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be extremely balanced as a defense, which I think allows Jim Knowles to open up a play sheet and just keep layering this defense. We can rush 3 and cover long. We can rush 4. We can bring 5. We can bring 6. And we've got guys that can play man. And we can give them, pre-snap looks and rotate to other things, because these guys have experience doing it.
Yeah. Took you a while, but that's why I like having you on here, but very well put. Seriously, I'm stammering, because if I'm an offensive coordinator now, when they go against like personnel, Oregon's going to have some guys they feel very confident in putting out there, from wide receiver to running back to quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, so but we'll get into that many more weeks from now and stuff. Sure. But yeah, the quandary has got to be off the chart. Last thing for you. You've gotten to see a little bit of Will Howard. I just brought it up a while ago. My question is, do they have the driver to drive this car? Will Howard, seriously, from the beginning of spring football, when we first got to watch him play a little, to the last full practice we got to watch, and then what we've heard about him since from just the defensive players talking about Will Howard, the quarterback. my jury was out on him a little bit because coming out of high school, obviously he wasn't as ballyhooed as Devin Brown, for example, or Julian Sayin, the freshman who's there right now, also battling for that third spot, maybe even battling for the backup quarterback spot. We'll see more of that maybe on Saturday, but Will Howard, just the more you're around this guy, he just seems that term Urban Meyer had, the grown ass man. He just seems to be a grown ass man in every aspect of things, including the fact the discipline he showed in the offseason to lose weight and become more slim and trim, but still at 6'5", 6'4", 6'5", 235 pounds, and was clocked at over 22 miles per hour running. Yeah. And not only that, but he not only can run, but will run, if you follow my drift. The big difference. I think this may be right guy, right time, right place. What's your talk? What's your take?
I think so too. And I mean, one thing that jumps out, a couple of things that jump out to me, but the first that I'll speak of is like, while we expect the offensive line to be improved, having a quarterback not just standing in the pocket like a statue in some cases was kind of what we got out of Kyle McCord last year, right?
Yeah.
Allows them to kind of like tinker with things with Will Howard as a better athlete, where you can move the pocket, in certain, and dash and waggle and boot, which is going to, play into our ability to run the football successfully, which allows the offensive line to create a little bit of indecision in the defense, the opponent defensive line. And I think, and in no way, shape, or form am I trying to make a comparison, but I think with Will Howard's athleticism and his ability to throw the football, it kind of takes you back to a feeling like we had with Justin Fields. It's, a very good athlete who can take off and get you a first down with his legs almost whenever he wants.
Yeah.
That has a lot to do with the fact that we have elite wide receivers that are going to stress defensive backs and take them up the field on down the field routes. And they're going to have to, again, I say cover long, right? Is if things break down, they're going to have to cover our elite playmakers, out of structure for an extremely long, period of time, where I feel like Emeka Egbuka and Smith and Carnell Tate are going to break, and Enos are going to break away from guys and allow Will Howard to still have his eyes down the field and deliver the football, which is what most quarterbacks, offensive coordinators, and play callers would like.
Yeah.
But if they're still covered, Will Howard can take off safely and go get you and make plays with his legs, which I think is as a defensive player, it's a backbreaker. You try to rush, in pressure lanes. You feel like you've put pressure on him enough for him to escape the pocket. You cover them downfield enough that there's nowhere for him to go with the football on a 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 count.
Yeah.
And you feel like you've won the down, and then the quarterback, breaks pocket or takes off down the middle if you don't have the correct rush lanes, and goes and gets that first downs. It's defeating.
Yeah.
It's extremely defeating. So to have that capability is another facet of our offense that I don't think we had last year. I also think that and again, this is complete speculation, but if this were me as an offensive play caller, with a 6'4", 6'5", 235-pound quarterback, I think you might, in certain situations, go back to what Urban would like with JT Barrett, with some of the QB run, QB power stuff, because you have to defend. It's like Wildcat, right? You have to defend another gap, and a defense has to honor that, right?
Yep.
And there's just a lot of layers by having a guy that's played at the college football level, that is a plus athlete, that is smart. And to your point, and I like to use this, that same phrase a lot, and I don't think I stole it from Urban Meyer. I think it, probably happened and was used, is grown ass man. You know what I mean? Just that maturity. I think when I think grown ass man, I think physicality, I think intelligent. And the fact that this gentleman's going to have the football in his hands, almost every snap, is a very, very good thing for Ohio State football.
Oh yeah. And here's the other thing, you touched on it. He's proven it. I mean, he's got video of him running through and around defenses starting 27 games at Kansas State. And the Kansas State people can talk all they want about, they've got Avery Johnson now. So Avery Johnson was going to be their starter even if Will Howard had stayed. Well, who knows, right? But the point is, time has moved on, and I have seen with my own eyes Will Howard improve in a major aspects of playing quarterback just since he's been at Ohio State, including the passing game, including being a more pinpoint thrower of the ball, including being quite discerning when he looks over the defense on where he's going with the ball. And he's got offensive coordinator
Yes,
who's almost perfect for him and Chip Kelly. Go ahead.
it is. And I'll just say, like, probably the biggest plus of us kind of coining the phrase, having Will Howard be a grown-ass man is his ability to manage playing the position probably with the most pressure of any school across college football.
Yeah.
So that, can you throw it? Can you run it? Great. But also, can you manage the pressure of playing quarterback, touching that football from our fan base, from the media, from the coaches, from your teammates, from yourself, from your parents, from your community, of being that dude in the scarlet and gray?
Yeah.
That by itself, like, what it is the most, and again, I think Joel Klatt pointed, a few years ago, it's like, it's the most pressure-filled position in all of college football is being the quarterback at Ohio State.
Yeah. Yeah. Great expectations, ladies and gentlemen.
And doing it makes me feel real good.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, we don't have to talk about everything this time because we're going to be back next week and then the week after. And then the week after, we're going to show consistency, ladies and gentlemen, through the season. Matt Wilhelm and I here on the Tim May Show. Matt, thanks for joining me, man, on this kickoff show. Last question for you. Are the great expectations, are they realistic? Should this team be playing for a college football playoff, extended playoff, first time ever? Should it be playing for the college football playoff national championship in January?
I think for many of the reasons that we've discussed in the last 45 minutes, the expectations are extremely real. In many cases, some years, unproven players that look great on paper are stepping into massive roles. There's not a lot of those guys, which is why you can believe the hype, because these guys have gone out and done it before. So I think they're absolutely true. I think the pressure on Ryan Day, the pressure on this staff, the pressure on Justin Fry to figure out the offensive line, the management of the playmakers in the linebacker room and the wide receiver room. Great problems to have, but still a thing as you attempt to go win a national championship. And I think for these seniors who all came back, for Ryan Day and the staff to exercise demons, beating the team up north, exercising demons that regardless of how great they are, have not, cheating or no cheating, that they're still there. And until you prove, yourself right, there's still questions, always questions.
Yeah, there's nothing like a loaded football team that still has chips on its shoulder. Many of those chips placed there by themselves, yes. But the motivation is clearly there for all kinds of reasons, right?
It is, and I think that for me, as a former player, given all those circumstances we just talked about and this immense talent, I want to see a hungry, angry, humble football team. Wow. HAH, humble, angry, and angry, right?
Yeah.
Angry, and a lot of those things are self-imposed. They should be humble for specific reasons. They should be angry for specific reasons. And in some cases, if you're competing at this level, you should always be hungry, but you should be hungry for opportunities that have failed you in the past.
There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, Matt Wilhelm, this is yours truly, Tim May. Hope you have a great opening day weekend with the Ohio State football team and with college football in general. And until next week, speaking for Matt Wilhelm, this is Tim May. We will see you then.